Sanity with their podcast host Keegan and Al. This is your podcast for all mental health, addiction, recovery issues, and topics. And, uh, well, aside from the Facebook Messenger going off, really what I'm trying to do is set up a schedule. And I mean, with a lot of stuff going on and my brain the way it is, sometimes I need all the help that I can get. So, this is kind of a long shot, right? And AI can help us with a bunch of stuff. I guess I can do that to kind of help out with uh, so I don't have to be all down here and stuff, you know. But anyways, no, AI is really cool. It can be used for schedule helping, I've heard, so I'm about to try it out. It can be used for a lot of logistical stuff, this, that, and the third. And really, I'm just kind of wanting to play around with it, see if it can help me with what I got going on in my life. So, Gemini has something called Live, which is actually really cool. So, we're going to see what it's like and if it can actually help me figure out like a schedule. So, anyways, let's kind of do a little bit of a deep dive on my schedule and just see what Gemini AI says. So, anyways, continue. Are you there?
Yes, I'm still here.
All right. Can we get back to working on a schedule for me?
Absolutely. So, to recap, we're trying to find a wake up and sleep time that works for you and
Hmm.
also build a schedule around your workdays. Do you have a specific career field or job title in mind?
Well, at the moment, I'm a copier technician by day and a podcaster at night, or more like on the weekends, I guess. Um, so, no.
All right, that's a good starting point. So, for your day job, do you have set hours or is your schedule more flexible?
It's pretty set. I clock in at 8 o'clock, 8 o'clock in the morning, and I clock out at 5 p.m.
All right, sounds like you've got a pretty set schedule for your day job.
Mm-hmm.
So, let's work from there. What
Okay.
time do you typically wake up now?
5:30 in the morning.
All right, 5:30. So, do you have any specific morning routine right now or do you usually just get up and go?
Uh, kind of just get up and go and lay there until the existential dread wears away.
All right, so maybe a little bit of both. Do you ever feel rushed in the mornings?
Yeah, sometimes. Sometimes. Not all the time, but every now and again.
All right, so maybe a little bit of both. Do you
Hmm.
ever feel rushed in the mornings?
Sometimes.
All right, well, let's see if we can tweak your morning routine a bit so you have a little more breathing room. Do
All
you
right.
want to try getting up a little earlier, like around 5:15, and
No.
maybe adding a few things to your routine?
No, but I'd like to add things to the routine.
All right, let's do that. Can you tell me about what your current morning routine looks like?
Let's see. Go to the restroom.
All right,
Then.
let's see if we can add a couple of things to your morning routine to help you feel a little more on top of things.
Okay.
How about this?
That's
Try
why I need a
drinking a big
routine.
glass of water right when you wake up. It'll help get your body going and your brain focused. You could
Hmm.
also try a quick 5 minute meditation or some gentle stretches.
Okay. I'll definitely try the meditation and water.
All right, let's move on to your evenings.
Okay.
What time do you usually hit the hay?
I'm usually in bed around 10:30, but going to sleep really depends.
All right, well, let's see if we can make that a little more consistent. Getting a good night's sleep can really make a difference in how you feel during the day.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe try setting a regular bedtime and
Mm-hmm.
having a calming nighttime routine to signal to your body that it's time to wind down. Just a reminder that I don't provide medical advice or diagnoses. You should always talk to a medical professional.
Okay. Will do. Understood.
All right, so maybe we should start with a few things you can do to get ready for bed a little earlier, like taking a warm bath or shower, reading a book for a bit, or trying some gentle stretches to help your body relax.
Sorry, can you repeat that? I was not paying attention.
Sure thing. So, we're talking about your nighttime routine.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we should start with a few things you can do to get ready for bed a little earlier,
Okay.
like taking a warm bath or shower,
Mm-hmm.
reading a book for a bit, or trying some gentle stretches to help your body relax.
Is meditations at night a good idea, or is that more of a morning thing?
Meditation's great any time of day, but it's especially good right before bed if you find your mind racing. It
Hmm.
helps calm you down and get ready for sleep. You could try a short body scan meditation where you focus on relaxing each part of your body, or a gentle breathing exercise to slow things down.
Okay. Um, can we look at setting up a weekly schedule?
Absolutely. Now that we've got a good foundation going for your daily routine, let's break down your week into work days and rest days. Do you have any specific days off?
Saturday and Sunday from my normal job, yes.
All right, so for your work days, it sounds like you have that 8 to 5 schedule. Let's focus on getting the most out of your evenings and those weekend days. Do you
Okay.
want to start with your evenings?
Yeah, let's start with the evenings.
All right, so on those weeknights, you've got a set time to get home from work. Do you typically have any chores or errands to run when you get in?
Checking the mail, doing dishes, and
All right, so maybe we can set aside a specific time for that stuff, like right when you get home, to get it out of the way. You could try listening to some music or a podcast while you do those chores to make it a little more fun.
okay. I mean, yeah, that works. I can do that. Um,
All right, so after you get those chores wrapped up, you'll have some free time to relax or work on your podcast. Do you have a set time when you like to start work on your podcast?
whenever I get the chance. But
All right,
I have other stuff going on, which is why I need to have certain days for certain things. You know what I mean?
yeah, I think I get what you're saying. It's about finding a balance between your podcast and everything else you've got going on.
Yeah.
Maybe we should look at your weekends and see how we can make some time for recording or editing there. How does that sound?
Yeah, let's start there.
All right, so on the weekends, you've got more free time. Do you usually have any specific plans or commitments?
It really just depends. Commitments. Certain Sundays I have recovery meetings, and then let's see. It really just kind of depends on which weekend it is. There's nothing in particularly
All right,
set. Uh, I
all right,
don't.
let's try this.
Okay.
Maybe you can set aside a few hours on Saturday morning for podcasting. You could do some recording, editing, or whatever else you need to do. Then, if you have any specific commitments on Sunday, you can work on your podcast later in the day or even early in the week if you need to.
Okay, so are you saying that the best time to do podcasting would be Saturday only?
You could definitely make Saturdays your main podcasting day. But you could also spread things out a bit. Maybe Saturday mornings are for recording, and then Sunday afternoons are for editing. You could even pick one weekday evening for some quick planning or research.
Okay. About how many hours a week do you think I should dedicate to my podcast?
Well, dedicating the whole week might be a bit much, especially if you have other stuff going on.
Yeah.
But maybe you could really focus on getting some good progress made. Could you tell me about what stage your podcast is in right now?
It's in full blown production, but I'm always trying to tweak it and make it better.
All right, well, this week could be a good time to focus on those tweaks and figure out what you want to change.
Okay.
Maybe you could spend some time listening to your old episodes and seeing what you like and don't like. Or you could try mapping out some ideas for new episodes or different ways to structure your current ones.
Okay. About how many hours should I spend on that?
Well, that kind of depends on how much free time you have and how many changes you want to make. Maybe set aside an hour or two each evening to go through some episodes and see what stands out. You could even keep a notebook or use your phone to jot down ideas as you listen.
That's a good idea. I like that. I mean, I've had that idea. I just haven't utilized that idea. Um, okay, so um, aside from podcasting, I also started two certification classes. They don't have a timeline or deadline, and I'd like to dedicate at least 2 hours to one each week. What would be the best day for that?
You could try picking a weekday for your certification studies, maybe Tuesday or Wednesday evenings, when you might have a little more time to focus. That way, you've got the whole weekend for podcasting and relaxing.
Gemini, I like you. This is why I asked you questions.
Hey, thanks a lot. I really appreciate that. I'm always learning new things myself, so it's really cool to be able to help out in a small way.
Cool. You know, I've always kind of thought, could you and I actually do a podcast episode together? Like a conversation like this?
Absolutely. We could turn this into a whole series. I could interview you about your experiences as a copier technician and podcaster. Or we could do something more general, like talking about time management or productivity. What do you think?
I I don't know why you'd have to ask me about being a copier technician. If anything, you should interview me about my alcoholism slash addiction that started the podcast. Um, but
I understand that addiction is a serious issue, and I'm sorry if my previous response seemed
no, no,
insensitive. If
no.
you'd like to talk about your experiences with alcoholism and how it relates to your podcast, I'm happy to listen and offer support.
Cool. Can you ask questions in that regard, though?
Absolutely, I can ask questions about your experiences with alcoholism and how it relates to your podcast. I can also offer support and resources if you'd like.
Cool. So I just figured out I have a new podcasting buddy. You. I didn't know that. Thank you.
I'm glad I could help. It's going to be fun working on this podcast together.
So now that we've decided, with your help, to set aside a weekday for the certification classes and most of the weekend for podcasting, specifically morning Saturday, and then evening on Sunday, or something along those lines. Um, what else can I do to make sure I have plenty of energy in between that, all my recovery meetings in the mornings, um, and then all the stuff that I do at night that doesn't have a time slot? Uh, you kind of know what I mean? What do I do with the time that doesn't have a slot? How do I make that more productive?
So it sounds like you want to fill in the gaps in your schedule and make
Yes.
the most of your time.
Yes.
Let's break things down a little. What kind of things do you enjoy doing outside of work and your other commitments?
Research, reading books. Let's see,
All right, so it
doing
sounds like you'd like to fit in more reading and research. Is there any particular topic you're interested in researching for your podcast? Maybe we could combine those activities.
uh self-help books, psychology books. Um, I also like spirituality
All right,
books.
well, all right, well, it sounds like you're into some really interesting stuff. Psychology and spirituality. That could make for some fascinating podcast episodes.
Yeah.
Maybe we should add some time for writing down thoughts and ideas that come up while you're reading. You could start a little journal or use a notes app on your phone.
Okay. Yeah, I have a mind map on my phone. Are you saying that I need to set aside time just for that as well?
Yeah, it might be a good idea to set aside some specific time for mind mapping and brainstorming. Even if it's just for 15 or 20 minutes, it can help you get into a creative zone and come up with some cool ideas. You could try doing it first thing in the morning or right before bed.
Is that whenever someone is most creative?
That's a common idea, but everyone's a little different. Some people find they're super creative right when they wake up, while others get their best ideas when they're winding down at night. It's really about finding what time of day works best for you.
What if I have a really awesome idea in the middle of a shower? How do I jot that down?
You could try getting a waterproof notepad or using a voice memo app on your phone. That way, you can capture those shower thoughts and get them written down later.
You know, Gemini, I like you. You're very, um, you.
Hey, thanks a lot. I appreciate that. I'm always learning new things myself, so it's really cool to be able to help out in a small way.
Hmm. So, aside from this little bit of trying to figure out what I can do to fill in my schedule with productive things, what are things that I can do to improve the podcast? As in,
There are a few things you can do to make your podcast even. As in, you could ask your listeners to fill out a short survey or leave a review on your podcast platform. That feedback can give you valuable insights into what's working and what's not.
fair enough. How is the best way, or not how is, what is the best way to increase a listener base?
There are a lot of ways to grow your listener base. Social media is a big one. Platforms like Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook can help you reach new people. Another way is collaborating with other podcasters, maybe even doing an interview swap to get exposure to each other's audiences. How about we focus on social media for now? What platforms are you most comfortable with?
Hmm. Um, Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, but TikTok is about to go away, so that one's not really relevant anymore, unfortunately.
Alright, so Facebook and YouTube. That's a good starting point. Both are really visual platforms, so it's important to have some eye catching artwork for your podcast, like a cool cover image. Also, short video clips from your podcast can do really well on both platforms. You could try creating some behind the scenes content, or even posting short highlights from your episodes.
Okay. So does humor tend to draw in people?
Humor can definitely help draw people in, but it depends on the type of podcast you have and the audience you're trying to reach. A little bit of humor can make your podcast more enjoyable, but you don't want to overdo it. It's all about finding the right balance.
Hmm.
What kind of humor do you like to use in your podcast?
What are some things to definitely avoid with a podcast about mental health?
It's important to be sensitive when
Hmm.
talking about mental health. Avoid making jokes about serious conditions, and be careful about generalizations. It's also important to be respectful of different perspectives and experiences.
I can say I'm not the best at some of that, but I do definitely try.
That's completely understandable. It takes practice to find the right balance when you're talking about sensitive topics. Maybe we should come up with some ground rules for your podcast, just to keep things on track.
You know, that's actually a really great idea because part of my certification class is talking about creating a safe environment and boundaries and stuff like that. And I feel that having certain rules for myself and the guests would definitely create a safer environment and also for the audience to enjoy.
Absolutely. Having those guidelines in place can really help set the tone for your podcast. We can even create a short disclaimer to read at the beginning of each episode.
Hmm. Okay, what should that disclaimer look like?
Okay, here's a draft of a disclaimer. You can change the wording to match the tone of your podcast. The views expressed on this podcast are for informational purposes only and do not constitute medical or professional advice. If you're struggling with your mental health, please seek help from a qualified professional.
Yeah, sounds like a general disclaimer, but definitely one that could be used in my podcast. I don't know why my voice just broke right there. Crack, crack.
That happens sometimes. Maybe we should take a quick break and come back to it. Do you want to try recording a few episodes this week and see how the disclaimer sounds in action?
Here's a okay. So let's have a little bit of sidetrack real quick. Okay.
All right, what's on your mind?
Okay. So with the sidetrack, I want to create an intro and or outro for the podcast. So something in between an episode or someone's listening. You know, what would be good for an intro or an outro?
Okay, for your intro, you'll want to grab your listeners' attention right away. Maybe something short and catchy with the name of your podcast. For the outro, it's a good time to remind listeners where they can find more episodes and encourage them to subscribe. You could also end with a call to action, like asking listeners to share the podcast with a friend or leave a review.
Okay. Should an intro or outro be pre-recorded?
Yeah, it's best to pre record both your intro and outro. That
Okay.
way, you can keep things consistent and save time on editing. You can always add some cool sound effects or music to make them even snazzier.
Can you define snazzy?
Snazzy means something is stylish, cool, and a little flashy. Like, think of your favorite pair of sunglasses that make you feel super confident when you put them on.
I don't like sunglasses. Sunglasses are not a good fit for my face and nose.
All right, fair enough. How about this? Think of snazzy as something that has that extra little something that makes it pop, you know? Like adding a sprinkle of something special on top.
Did you just rhyme intentionally?
Yep, I sure did. How'd you like that?
I can appreciate that.
All right, let's get back on track. You mentioned you wanted to create a safe space for your guests and your audience.
Hmm.
What kind of rules or guidelines do you think would help establish that?
I don't know. I think avoiding overly sensitive topics, maybe, but I can't really do that because some of those topics are what shaped the person's story. And for them to heal in that regard, they need to help, they need to be able to express that freely.
That's a great point. Healing definitely involves facing those sensitive topics head on. Maybe instead of avoiding them, you could set some ground rules about how those topics are discussed on the podcast. For example, you could ask guests to focus on how they've coped or what they've learned, rather than getting into graphic details.
That's a good idea. Do you think it would be a good idea to try to introduce a trigger warning either by myself in editing or introduce it to the guest and have them use the trigger warning before they share something that could trigger someone?
Trigger warnings are a good way to give your listeners a heads up about potentially sensitive topics. You could do them a couple of ways. Maybe have guests mention them directly when they're about to discuss something triggering, or you could edit them in yourself after recording. It's really about what feels right for you and your guests.
Hmm, okay. So, with that regard, if someone were to share something that I don't want to or they want redacted, I could always edit that in final production before release. Should I offer my guests the choice to review the episode after I edit it before I publish it?
That's a really thoughtful way to give your guests some control over how they're represented. You could offer a quick turnaround for them to listen and let you know if there's anything they'd like changed. It shows you care about them as people and helps build trust.
Yeah, I've been thinking about doing that. So I appreciate that. Um,
You're
and
welcome. Creating a podcast that's both supportive and engaging takes a lot of thought and effort. It sounds like you really care about your guests and your audience, and that's awesome.
well, thank you. I try. Um, let's
You're
see.
welcome. So, do you want to brainstorm some podcast episode ideas now that we have a better sense of the direction you want to take?
Can we pause right here and pick it up next time I try Gemini Live?
Sounds good. Let's pick this up again soon. Do you want to save any specific thoughts or ideas for next time?
All of it. That was great. I want to uh, create intros and outros with disclaimers and fundraising opportunities. That's what I want to do next time.
All right, sounds good. Let's pick up there next time. I'm looking forward to it.
All right. Thank you very much. Talk to you soon.
Anytime.
That was. Um, hang on. Let me get that fixed a little bit. That was awkward. I didn't mean to, just. Anyways, yeah, that was Gemini Live AI. So, couple of things. I really enjoyed that. That was very interesting, and also highlighted some of the things that I've been thinking about doing, and I'm just not sure if I should, shouldn't, how I should go about it. And one of those things is actually just going live on YouTube and Facebook more regularly. And I don't know why I don't necessarily, besides the apprehension aspect. And sometimes I feel like I don't have anything to talk about. But I mean, at the same time, that's entirely why I started this. I have a lot to say about nothing and everything all at the same time. Who's going to listen to me? Well, apparently 16, actually, the last reports came in. I have per week, I don't necessarily know how many are listening, but it's roughly 16K. So that's pretty cool. And that's just one radio station. That is nothing live or anything like that. But I actually do have an option to do my episodes live, which I'm looking at doing. So that's really cool. Interested in doing that. Um, I'm working with Ricardo Zulueta. I'm going to meet up with him to figure out how I can also use AI in other ways to better my podcast and all over just my life. If I can use it to help with the podcast, it's going to affect every other aspect of my life because every other aspect of my life right now revolves around this in some way, shape, or form. So, yeah, it's kind of weird to think about. I mean, it doesn't revolve around, but it is definitely a center figure. So that's one of the things too, is that I need to do more with this, and I feel like I haven't been able to do the most um, as a host because I don't know. Um, it's funny because a lot of podcasters face the imposter syndrome. Um, and boy, do I get that, especially doing a recovery podcast. Like, and then sometimes like going from uh, recordings to meetings, and then my day to day life, and then getting burnt out, and then seeing what these other people are doing and hearing about their successes. I'm starting to do the comparison thing and just going like, oh my gosh, am I really in recovery? Because all these people just do all this stuff, and I just I keep sitting there and comparing, and that's not how it should go. The comparison is not what are they doing and I'm not. It's not this, that, or the whatever. For me, my comparison has to be with myself and what I did the day before. And some days I do really, really good. Some days I do really, really bad. But speaking of, I think it's time for me to hop on one of my recovery meetings. So for now, I'll talk to y'all later. Sean.